and today's gratuitous food shot is Hakata Chashu Men. Hi guys, thanks once again for dropping by, and today I want to talk about Typhoon Hagibis, which we just experienced last night. I made a video about the last typhoon, Typhoon Faxai, or Faxai as everybody seems to have agreed to call it now, so it made sense to do one about this typhoon as well. Typhoon Hagibis, or in Japanese, Typhoon Jukyu-go, not Jukyu-ban, which is what I said in the last video, ignore me, was a pretty unpleasant experience all around. It's being reported all around the world right now, it broke several records, and generally it's been considered the worst typhoon for decades. For those who are most affected, it's very serious. There's widespread flooding, power is out to hundreds of thousands of homes, several people are reported dead with many more missing, so I'm sure the death toll will go up pretty high by the end of this reporting cycle. But I have to say, for me personally, the last typhoon, Faxai, was much more dramatic and much more, anxiety inducing than this one was. If anything, this one was quite underwhelming, which isn't to say I want to be like, those usual suspects who are already posting their pictures of one leaf having fallen down and saying, this is the great damage that we've experienced here. I ranted enough about that in the last video, I won't go into that again. But yeah, it's certainly the case that in many ways I overreacted and I made some mistakes through my actions and inactions that I'll be very careful not to make again in future. So yes, of course, in any video discussing a typhoon, it's obligatory to cut in some dramatic footage from the news. So let's steal some from the BBC. Here you go.
Japan to evacuate their homes immediately as Typhoon Hagibis lashes the country.
Okay, wait, hold on just a second there. First of all, Hagibis, we can say it like that as well, why not? But more importantly, I know that newscaster. I went to university with that guy. His name's Ben. Yeah. Here's a picture of us. Best not to ask what we were doing there. I'm kidding. It was a show. It was for footlights. But that's kind of surreal. Anyway, let's get back to this exciting footage. So yeah, before anything else, let's not forget that this kind of thing is the reality for some people. People have got family members in hospital, people have got their homes partially underwater, people are unable to access everything that is important to them in their lives, so we should be respectful for people who are living that kind of experience, even if we're the lucky ones. But yes, for me personally, the day was a pretty harrowing one, and I actually haven't eaten anything in almost 48 hours. I subsisted on coffee, and I guess it's testament to my anxiety levels that I didn't actually want to eat anything since then, and even to right now. I mean, I've had some sugary drinks, had some sugary coffee. I'm fueled entirely by sugar and caffeine, I think. That's not that different from a regular day, to be honest. But yeah, after a pretty sleepless night during Faxai, I was kind of on edge for this typhoon when it was announced, and we all saw the size of it. It was considerably bigger than Faxai. It's accelerated into a proper typhoon very quickly. It was Category 5 equivalent. It was, a big deal. It was initially forecast to hit the Tokyo area at about 3 p.m. So I thought I would have enough time during the day, during that Saturday, to prepare, especially since work had cancelled on me. Thankfully, it would have been pretty disastrous if I had to go to Shinjuku. I think I was supposed to work that day. It was only yesterday. It was definitely Shinjuku. But yeah, I was woken up at about 10 a.m. to very dramatic wind and the sound of a real downpour. I guess at that stage I kind of panicked a little bit. I went outside and I saw my garden was already flooding. I have a pond out there, and I had these mental images of, torrents of water crossing the garden and sweeping my goldfish away with them, and I thought, that's not fair to those poor creatures. So I went out in the pouring rain, got myself soaked to the skin, rescuing all my fish and bringing them inside in little tanks. Yeah, more on that point later, but anyway, my thought process was, if it's raining this much now, and the typhoon is still way off the south coast of Japan, what's it going to be like when it really hits? This is going to get so much worse. we're probably going to get flooding. The previous day I'd been walking home and seen a lot of the shops and residences had a lot of sandbags prepared just in case of a large-scale flood. So, you know, I thought it was enough of a big deal that I had to go and rescue my pets. But as it transpired, this was probably the most dramatic time of the day, except a bit later on when we had an earthquake during the typhoon, which, by the way, I totally called in my last video. When that happened, everyone was like, mind blown, 2 terrible things happening at once. And I was like, aha! I spoke about that in my YouTube video. Too bad only about 4 people watched it. But anyway, the truth is that at this point in time, some of the most severe damage was happening, even with the typhoon still pretty far away. Typhoons indirectly can lead to tornadoes, and that's what happened in Chiba. There was a sudden tornado, some houses were heavily damaged, a car was flipped over, killing its occupant, although whether that was directly the result of the tornado is something they're investigating. So with my garden already a little bit flooded, with fish indoors that normally reside outdoors, and with memories of being shaken in the house by Faxai, I thought, okay, I'll take measures to make myself comfortable and, you know, try to have a productive day. I didn't have a productive day. I moved everything down to my living room. I got a mattress from the spare bedroom and I set it up in here. Yes, I have a spare bedroom here in Japan. It's nice. And I gathered all my pets around me, including this troublesome little one. Are you making noises when I'm trying to film? And then yes, I set up to watch the NHK World News. In the place in the house, I thought I would be least likely to have anything collapse on me, or, you know, for the roof being ripped off to really matter. That was my line of thinking. I did manage to catch a little bit of sleep now and then, but yeah, basically the whole day became a cycle of, you know, watching the news, checking various websites that told me about, you know, the wind strength and where the typhoon is and how swollen the rivers are, which became the most important part of it, and then discussing that with various people online, with my family back home, with my Japanese friends as well a little bit. They were really great about sending me material that told me I should just evacuate my ward. And then yes, as the day wore on, the rain continued to fall, but not as hard as it had been in the morning, at least where I lived. The garden actually started to dry up, and I thought, this is not what I was expecting at all. On the other hand, the pictures from the news were pretty much in line with expectations. The rivers looked really violent. There was flooding, especially in Shizuoka at the time. And yeah, before long I got a warning on my phone. I got a Japanese disaster alert, which is actually the first time that's ever happened. I'm not sure if it's because I relatively recently upgraded my phone, but yeah, throughout all the previous typhoons, throughout all the previous earthquakes I've been through here in Japan, I've never got one of those alerts on my phone, including during Faxai. But I did this time, over and over again. Now this is largely because I live in Edogawa ward, and the Arakawa was looking like it really might burst its banks. It was on severe warning level. I think it still is, actually. But I don't live close to the Arakawa. I actually live in the eastern part of Tokyo, close to the Edogawa, the Edo River. Where I live is actually, apart from I think Kasai Rinkai Park, the highest point of the ward, although that only puts it at about 7 meters above sea level or something like that, so it's not exactly particularly remarkable. But even though I started to really watch the levels of the rivers, the Edogawa never even received a warning. It never even reached the sort of medium warning level, whereas the others were at like level 5, you must evacuate now warning level. So one thing that I've really got from this is that even in record-breaking rainfall, the Edogawa really didn't have any problems. In fact, you've probably seen images of Tokyo's famous flood defences, the MAOUDC, the Metropolitan Area Outer Underground Discharge Channel, I think that's right, which is this immense underground structure beneath Tokyo on the outskirts. Actually, I think it's in Saitama, but it protects Tokyo. There are these 5 massive cisterns underneath the ground which collect rainwater in case of just this kind of emergency, and then it can be released slowly. It was a massively expensive project. I think it cost $2 billion, and it was planned and commissioned just at the end of Japan's big bubble period, so they had the money to pay for this kind of public infrastructure, which they don't anymore, which is why I guess it's the only one and probably will remain the only one for a very long time. But yeah, the point is, this huge discharge channel empties into the Edogawa. So not only does it collect rainwater that would otherwise have been going into the Edogawa and regulate it, it's also considered that the Edogawa is big and broad enough that if it does need to very quickly discharge some of that water, of course it can't be discharged that quickly, it has to be pumped back out using massive engines. But yeah, the Edogawa is big enough and capacious enough that that's the river chosen to put this water into. So I feel like the chance of the Edogawa flooding and bringing about the nightmare scenario of the entire ward being underwater is very unlikely. That, however, is something that with hindsight seems obvious, but when you're in the midst of a typhoon and you don't know how much more it's going to escalate, it's not really how you're thinking. So in the end, I did no work during the day. I was hoping that I would do some more writing, I was hoping that I would do some more music. The reason that I'm barely updating my YouTube channels is that I'm mostly spending that time doing music stuff that I need to get out of the way first. So it was, I guess, a little bit disappointing, and I didn't sleep well the night before, and I didn't sleep well the night of the typhoon, so basically I'm not at my best, I would say. And then earlier than expected, kind of around not long after midnight, the typhoon was just gone. I'd kind of expected it to escalate a lot. There were some little patches where the wind was quite loud and the house rocked slightly. Of course, when the earthquake hit, I thought that was wind pushing the building, because that's very much what it felt like during Faxai. But in the event, the feeling of being in very strong winds really never came this time. During Faxai it was dramatic, my windows were rattling, there was some leaking going on around the window frames, my trees outside got uprooted a little bit and had to be kind of pushed back in. And I did take measures against that this time. I put stones and tubs full of water in strategic places to stop that happening, but I really don't think it would have happened anyway. I just don't think the winds that hit me in this particular spot were nearly as strong as the ones that hit during Faxai. Which isn't to say that other areas didn't experience incredibly strong winds. I'm sure they did, and something that I've learned during this experience is that the winds of a tornado are massively faster than any other winds. They're not even recorded because it's too dangerous and unreliable to get an instrument to get the readings from those. So, our world records for fastest winds are all from hurricanes and typhoons, tropical cyclones, but none of them are, actually the fastest winds experienced, because those are all in tornadoes and not measured. Just a random little nugget of knowledge that I picked up. So yeah, I went to sleep and tried to wake up early. I did wake up quite early, and overall, yeah, it wasn't that big a deal for me personally. But that's definitely not the experience universally. A lot of people have been displaced, a lot of people are still in a very bad situation, a lot of people have suffered compounded damage because Faxai had already caused havoc in Chiba, and then this has just, exacerbated those problems. So yeah, another storm has passed. I've come out unscathed. I feel like I will not experience many of this strength in my lifetime, so if the house was fine in these, I'm sure it will be fine in almost every other storm that is to come. Earthquakes are perhaps the bigger worry for me. But yeah, on a, I guess, more personal note, I mean, I've been keeping this as upbeat as possible, but I'm pretty upset because some of the fish that I brought in ended up not making it through the night. You know, I really thought I'd provided them with enough to get through the night quite easily. You know, the water was totally clean, there was a little oxygen bubbler in there, but some of them didn't make it, and I'm quite upset about that. I know goldfish dying isn't, you know, the biggest tragedy of the world, but I did really love these little guys, and they brought me a lot of happiness, so I'm sad that they're gone, and I'll have to replace them. And I guess the thing that's actually quite upsetting about it is that it's probably my actions that led to this happening, you know. I had good intentions, that's for sure. I wanted to take those little guys out of the pond because I was having these images of a torrent of brown water gushing past and sweeping them away, never to be seen again. So, you know, I do understand my own actions, sure, but the fact is, if I had just left them there, if I lowered the pond level, or, well, it doesn't really matter because, you know, there's stones around it, so when the water comes out of it, yeah, the only scenario in which they would have died would have been that massive inundation, which certainly could have happened, and has happened in various other areas not too far away from here. But if I knew what was going to happen, if I was psychic, I could have just left them in there and I think they would have been fine. Plus, when I was going to bed, I thought, shall I take the fish out? Should I just put them in the water? The thing is, city rainwater is not that clean, so I'm kind of averse to just putting them into the water. It was looking a little bit muddy from runoff from the garden as well, so I thought they're probably more likely to stay healthy in here than out there. But I don't think that was really the case. There was one fish I put out there because he's big and robust, he's a little koi, and he seems to be fine. But yeah, I screwed up, and I'm sorry, little fishies. Today and tomorrow I'll go to my favourite goldfish shops to try and find similar fish to put in their place, which is, you know, a little sad, but yeah, unlike, you know, rabbits and sugar gliders, I guess goldfish are a little bit more replaceable. And on that super fun, happy, bright, cheerful note, I'm going to finish there. I do have to go to work today. It was not cancelled for me. And yes, I do work on Sundays. I don't work much on the weekdays, but I do usually work both weekend days. So I'll have to do that and navigate possibly highly delayed train systems. See you next time, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.